Okay.
Hello, my name is Owen Nielsen, and this is Linda Nielsen. We are from Great Basin Museum near Delta, Utah. We are here to make a video about an important but often overlooked period of Utah history. We are on location at Scipio Pass to begin to discuss some of the adventures of two intrepid Spanish explorers. They were Francisco Atanasio Domingues and Silvestre Vélez de Escalante. They were two Catholic priests from Santa Fe, New Mexico. Their story deserves to be told.
Well, why Catholic priests and what were they doing here?
Well, in New Spain at that time, that would be 1776, all officially recognized exploration and colonization had to be done under direction of one or more of the religious orders. And these two priests were Franciscans.
Well, how can I learn more about this interesting part of Utah history?
With this video, we're going to visit some of their campsites through this part of Utah and read some of the comments from the actual Dominguez Escalante journal. In some ways, this part of their journey was the most difficult. There were long stretches lacking drinkable water, and with a horse herd to care for, this presented serious problems. They came from over there. That's the I-15 corridor. That was on September 30th, 1776. They camped over there near a small spring called Ojo de Cisneros. That was the day before they passed over this pass. That would have been September 30th. Now we're looking at the small town of Scipio. It was settled by Mormons 81 years after these events. This was the Dominguez Escalante exploration party of 1776. There were 10 known members of the expedition, plus 3 known and several more unknown Ute Indians who came and went at various times to serve as guides. It is interesting to note that even though this country was completely unknown to white European explorers at that time, it was home to and very well known by the various Ute tribes who called it home. The expedition was historically important in that it was the first contact between Western civilization and the Native Americans of this area. An accurate record of the journey was kept by Dominguez and Escalante, including a description of the terrain, hardships endured, Indians encountered, streams, rivers, exploitable resources, agricultural potential, and much more. A map was made by Don Bernardo Miera with travel distances between each campsite. Though the stated objective of the mission was to scout out an overland route from Santa Fe, New Mexico to Monterey, California, one gets the impression from the journal that the two Franciscan priests were more interested in saving souls than exploring wagon routes. Still, some 24 years later, following intermittent use by fur trappers and traders, part of their route became known as the Old Spanish Trail. That trail was well used from about 1800 to 1849 by merchant caravans going to and from the missions of California. The expedition leader was Domingues. His official title was Visitor of the Custody of the Conversion of St. Paul. He was sent north from Mexico City to inspect and report back on the state of the missions of New Mexico. In the process, he offended and made enemies of many long-time residents of that region. After the expedition, he spent the remaining 30 years of his life at various assignments in New Spain's northern frontier, still trying, but in vain, to clear his name from charges made by his enemies. His inspection report was found in the archives of Mexico City in 1927 and published in 1956. It's hard not to make the comparison between the Dominguez Escalante expedition and the Lewis and Clark Corps of Discovery, which came 27 years later. Both were sponsored by government entities to explore lands for which ownership was claimed, but about which virtually nothing else was known. In New Mexico, the governor, Fermin de Mendinueta, provided the necessary supplies and horses and equipment for the Franciscans, while in Washington, Thomas Jefferson saw to properly equipping the Corps of Discovery. Lewis and Clark opened the Northwest to further exploration and eventual incorporation into the United States. Dominguez and Escalante tried but failed to tie the Southwest firmly to the Spanish Empire. Technically, the expedition was a failure, but sometimes an historical event is more important for what failed to happen than for any immediate success. We will see why when we discuss results later in our travel log. Now, throughout this video, we'll stop at the campsites and read short excerpts from the actual journal of events that occurred at these various locations. Now, for this spot at Scipio Pass, we have the entry of October 1st, and it reads as follows. On the 1st of October, we left El Hojo de Cisneros. Going back nearly half a league towards the north, we again took to the south, and after going a quarter league through a narrow valley, which was rocky in places, climbing in it a ridge cut out of the Sierra. That's Scipio Pass. We'll catch you later down at our next stop, down near Pahvant Butte. We are now on 8 Mile Creek on the Escalante Trail. We're a few miles from Scipio Pass. And let me read the journal entry for this location. The journal says, having descended the ravine, our pass, we took to the west-northwest over low hills with a great deal of rock, and having gone 2 leagues, we entered a sagebrush stretch and traveled 3 leagues west along the edge of a dry arroyo. That's 8 Mile Creek. Without a trail, we left the arroyo, and after going 2 leagues west by north, turned towards the plain. We are now at the location where 8 Mile Arroyo empties into the valley. We're still on the Escalante Trail. That's a sign marker there. Somewhere off to the west, towards Pahvant Butte, they saw what looked like water, and at this point they were eagerly anticipating drinking water for their livestock and for themselves. We find ourselves now on the campsite of the evening of October 1st. The site itself is off in the distance where we're looking, a little over 4 miles, out in the area of those mud flats. Let me now read from the journal entry for this time period. While still to the east, we thought we saw marshland or lake water nearby, hurried our pace, and discovered that what we had judged to be water was salt in some places and in others dried alkaline sediment. We kept on going west by south over a plain and salt flats, and after traveling more than 6 leagues, we halted without having found water fit to drink or pasturage for the horses, since these had already gone as far as they could go. They had traveled 36 miles that day. 2 companions had gone off in search of water, and they said that they had seen some a league further on beyond this place. Upon this report, we decided that as soon as the moon came up, they would take the horse herds at a slow pace to have them drink and bring back water for the men. They did not come up on the water previously seen, and so leaving 2 behind with the horse herd, the other 3 went off to look for it in the direction where they had told us. El Rio de Santa Isabel was with respect to our position. They were looking for the Sevier River. On October 2nd, when they woke up that morning, the horse herd had wandered off, driven by thirst. So as you can imagine, they were in a desperate situation at this point, on foot in a wilderness. A little later, those who had gone in search of water arrived with some Indians into whose camps they had stumbled, these being located at the edge of El Rio de Santa Isabel. This was near present Deseret, Utah. These were from among the full-bearded and pierced-nosed one. The 5 of them who came first with their chief were so fully bearded that they looked like Capuchin Padres or Bethlehemites. The chief was already advanced in years, yet not aged, and of very good appearance. They stayed, talked very happily with us, and in the briefest time won our great affection. An enduring mystery even today is who were these bearded Indians? Very unusual for Native Americans to have full beards, as described here. We announced the gospel to them as well as the interpreter could manage it, explaining to them God's oneness, the punishment he reserves for the wicked, the reward he gives to the righteous, and the necessity of holy baptism and of the knowledge and observance of the divine law. But where they expressed themselves the most was when we were already leaving this place. Scarcely did they see us depart when all, following their chief who started first, burst out crying copious tears, so that even when we were quite a distance away, we kept hearing the tender laments of these unfortunate little sheep of Christ. They touched our hearts so much that some of our companions could not hold back the tears. We are now looking at the lace curtain on Pahvant Butte. This was formed when lava flowed into Old Lake Bonneville. This happened between 16 and 20,000 years ago when the lake was at its high level point. This extrusive material came up through the bottom of the lake and formed this amazing structure. We are here at the October 3rd campsite for the expedition. It's a beautiful, warm summer day in June, but the expedition was here on the 3rd of October, and it was cold and stormy at that time. We are looking up the valley down which they came, and off to the left behind the butte is Pahvant Butte, where the last campsite was. Let me read what the journal entry for October 3rd has to say. We came to an arroyo which seemed to have much water, but we found only some water holes where the horse herd might be able to drink with difficulty. Nevertheless, we stopped here because there was good pasturage. All over the arroyo there was a kind of white scum, dry and thin, which looked from afar like linen spread out, for which reason we named it Arroyo de Tejedor. In the view now you can see an old trail marker that was set up years ago. Linda is walking towards it. They spent the evening of October 3rd here, and then on October 4th they moved off towards the south and towards the southwest. We are now at the October 4th evening campsite of the expedition, and they called this location Las Vegas del Puerto, which means the meadows at the gates. And the reason they called it a meadow is because the Beaver River used to water this area, and that white area you see out in front of you was at that time a lush green meadow. Let me read what the journal has to say for this day. After going somewhat less than 5 leagues, we reached the South Pass and exit of Llano Salado. In the arroyo mentioned, we found more water, not as bad as yesterday's, and beautiful meadows greatly abounding in good pasturage for the horse herds, which by now were very much exhausted because the brackish waters had done them much harm. And so we stopped here, naming the site Las Vegas del Puerto, today 5 leagues. On the morning of the 5th, they set out from this area heading south along the river. The reason they called this the gates was because it separates, that high spot in the distance separates the Escalante Desert from the Black Rock Desert. You are looking now at the campsite for the evening of the 6th of October. It's off in the distance about 1 mile where you've seen the green strip in the picture. They called it San Atenagones. While here they realized to get to Monterey they would have to turn west. And they noticed this mountain range off to the west and possibly a pass. The journal says that after we halted, 2 went off to find out if the Sierra's western side and likewise the valley that was there could be negotiated and furnished any hope of finding water sources and pasturages for the horse herds. It was already dark when they returned, saying that they had not found any pass for traversing the Sierra, that it was very high and rugged from this direction, and that ahead of it lay a wide plain without any pasturage or water source whatsoever. Now that evening they were hit with a severe early winter snowstorm. The journal says, on the 6th, morning came with snow falling, and this went on all day long without ceasing. And for this reason we could not undertake a day's march. Night came, and on seeing that it would not stop, we implored the intercession of our mother and patroness by praying aloud in common the 3 parts for a rosary. The next day they were still stalled here. On the 7th we could not depart from San Atenagenes either, although we were in great distress, without firewood and extremely cold, for with so much snow and water the ground which was soft here was unfit for travel. This was further evidence that they would not make it to Monterey. On the 8th, we set out from San Atenagenes over the plain toward the south. So it wasn't until the 8th that they were finally able to leave. Now this concludes our tour of Millard County camp locations. We started in the north, and now we've finished here in the south. We've visited each one of the campsites in our county. A few miles south of here begins Beaver County. One county further south from that occurred the casting of the lots, officially ending any hopes of reaching Monterey. So that concludes our little discourse on the expedition's travels through Millard County. Thanks for your time, and be sure to visit us on our website, greatbasinmuseum.com. Thank you.